Alright, so I thought I'd talk about a couple things in this video about The Last of Us, Season 2. First of all, the episode itself, and then I wanted to talk a bit about review bombing. And we've seen a lot of headlines recently about how this season is being review bombed, how it's a blast from the past, just like the second game was review bombed, and then just the nature of what that means. What does it mean to have something be review bombed? And what does that mean in the broader discourse? So first of all, this episode I thought was interesting for a couple of reasons. Kind of the two big things that happen this episode, is that they bring back the notion that the cordyceps plague can be spread via spores in the air. This was something from the games from the very beginning. You could always catch this bug via airborne spores. So in a lot of scenes, Joel and Ellie Ellie's immune, but Joel and other characters will wear gas masks to prevent spores from getting in their lungs, which would immediately turn them into fungal zombies. This was taken out of the show because they didn't want to have masks on all the time. And I get that, especially because it's Pedro Pascal, who, of course, was the Mandalorian, and so in that major role, he had to wear his helmet kind of almost all the time, and I'm sure he didn't want to have another role where he was just always in a gas mask. Fair enough. Now he's dead, so they're bringing it back. As far as bringing it back goes, I think it makes for an interesting dramatic turn. Like, the threat is getting worse now. I don't hate that, actually. I thought it was weird that they took it out, so I'm not actually opposed to them bringing it back. It's a new threat, right? And at the moment, it's only in this basement in the hospital, but presumably it's happening all over. Now, why is this happening? Is it evolving? Is it just they didn't notice it before? But it provides a new threat that I think it's good for conflict, it's good for tension, whatever. The second big thing is the death of Nora. And Nora, of course, is one of Abby's people. She's one of the ones that was there when Joel was killed. And in this episode, Ellie tracks her down after she separates from Dina and Jesse. And Jesse catches up with them in this episode. So Dina and Ellie are trying to find the hospital, and they use Dina's map skills to find a way past the wolves. And it's through this sort of indoor area where it turns out they're not only infected, but a bunch of these smarter clickers that are actually like not just mindless zombies, but actually strategize and flank and do all that, like the one that she met in episode 1. And they almost get killed, and then Jesse shows up at the nick of time and saves them. Turns out that Jesse and Tommy have been tracking them. They left like a day later, and they tracked them to the theater and then found the maps, and then that's how Jesse tracked them down. And I guess Tommy's gone off somewhere else. Obviously, this is very different from the game because Tommy was the one who set out first in the game, and Ellie and Dina and kind of come across all the mayhem he's caused. But it's reversed here. I thought the scene with the clickers and whatnot was pretty intense. I do find it funny whenever like heroes are saved because somebody else shows up in the nick of time. It's just sort of a cliche, gimmick to use in a show like this, but whatever. They escape to the park and they see some of the scars executing one of the wolves. They disembowel him, and it's this whole thing. They got their torches. I find the Seraphite cult very goofy. Like I just find all of that very, like in a show that, especially in season 1, was like really rooted in realism and whatnot. This sort of feels like The Walking Dead, which is itself a show that was originally rooted in more realism and grittiness. And the further we get away from that realism and grittiness, both in The Walking Dead and here, the more goofy and cartoonish it feels. And the scars are just way over the top. They're like these psychotic, murderous Amish people. They don't use technology, and they shave their heads and mark up their faces with scars, and they have torches and bows and arrows, and Dina gets shot with an arrow. And it was one of my problems with the game, where it just felt like, this feels like a video game faction rather than these, actual serious communities and characters that we'd come into contact with before. But anyways, Ellie separates. Dina and Jesse go back to the theater, presumably to the theater. We don't see them get there, but Ellie causes a distraction. She gets away from the scars. She gets to the hospital alone, tracks down Nora, who pretends initially to be all like, woe is me. I have nightmares about Joel dying. And then she uses that to distract Ellie and try to get away. And she's like, that little bitch had what was coming. Blah, blah, blah. She's a very unpleasant person. At that point, I would want to beat her to death with a pole too. Not really, but maybe if I was in Ellie's shoes looking for revenge. So Ellie chases her, and the wolf guards come to save Nora, but she's run into this elevator shaft in this hallway that's supposed to be barred off because of the spores. So they don't come after because they need to seal that up because they don't want to, get infected. But by the time Ellie finds Nora, she's infected, and she tries to get information out of her. Nora tells her what Joel did, and Ellie's like, I know. So she already knows. We learned that she already knows that Joel killed all those fireflies, and that he, isn't all he said he was or whatever. So clearly Joel and Ellie have had this conversation already, which leads me to believe that we're going to get a scene that from the game that we haven't gotten yet in the show. And that we're going to see more of Joel, obviously, in flashbacks. But when Nora won't tell her, Ellie gets a metal pole and starts beating her, filled with rage, and clearly she's going to kill her. So this is a really important moment for Ellie, and I'm glad they didn't cut it from the show. I was a little worried because they've made some changes where it's like, oh, are they actually gonna go where they need to go with her in this? Because Ellie in the game originally is somebody who is absolutely devoured by her need for revenge, and it completely corrupts her and changes her. And so far in the show, they're kind of la-di-daing it to Seattle. There's some emotional moments, but a lot of it is goofiness, and she seems pretty happy for someone who is on a revenge quest. This has been one of the main criticisms I've seen from viewers, and I don't disagree. I think that we need moments of levity and comic relief, even in the dire straits that they're in and on this revenge quest. But I think it would have behooved the show to have Ellie a little less chipper in these last couple of episodes, and a little more determined and grim and, out for blood. Well, now she is. So this is good because we need that to happen for her story to make sense, and for where this all goes with her and Dina's relationship, and her and Abby and everything else. So we see that finally, this rage-filled, angry, vengeful, violent version of Ellie. And really the last time we saw her raging was in the second episode when she watches Joel die. And then we kind of get calm Ellie, who's being reasonable with the townsfolk of Jackson, and we get adventure Ellie, but we don't get determined, angry, vengeful Ellie. And now we have her. So we'll see what happens in the next couple episodes. There's only 2 left. Without spoiling it, I do know what happens in the next episode, but I'm not going to talk about it because I don't want to spoil it for people. I will say this. We still haven't seen Abby, and I don't think we're going to see her until the finale. Well, I know we won't see her at least until the finale because she's not there next week, which means that we really won't get any of Abby's story probably until season 3. I'm assuming that the season 2 finale will be one of the major turning points in the video game, which I won't give away. And that brings us to review bombing. So I've seen a bunch of headlines saying, The Last of Us Season 2 is being review bombed. What all these fans are saying about The Last of Us Season 2 is just bullshit. It's all about Bella Ramsey and her looks, and it's all about how it's woke garbage and blah, blah, blah. And trust me, I know some of it is, because I get lots of comments that are just mean-spirited about Bella Ramsey, who, frankly, I think that she's not the right casting choice for Ellie, but I don't think she's a bad actor, and I don't think it's very classy to make fun of people's looks, or whatever. I do think, just in terms of outward appearance, she looks very young and very small, and that's hard for this story, I think, for me to accept someone that looks so young and so small. But I think she is doing a fine job, whatever. I think the writing has been the main problem there. But the problem with this framing of things, people go and they go to Metacritic or Rotten Tomatoes or wherever else, IMDb, and they give very, very low reviews of something they dislike. And then it doesn't line up perfectly with critic reviews, for whatever reason. Critics are not as motivated by social justice issues like being pissed that it's woke or whatever. Critics, whatever the reasons are, there's a big disparity. So we get a lot of headlines saying, "Oh, look at this review bombing, all these bigots, blah 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 blah." And we've seen it over and over again with video games, TV shows, movies. And the problem isn't that there aren't people review bombing, that haven't watched it, that just don't like, the casting, or they don't like the politics, or they don't like Disney, or they don't like whatever. There are lots of those people who will go and review something they haven't watched. The problem is that this is a very, 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 very insidious way for journalists to write off, or for creators of these shows or companies to write off valid criticism, right? They say, "Oh, look at all these haters. Look at all these sexists. Look at all these bigots. If you don't like this thing, you are part of that group. You're just part of the problem, part of the review bombing, part of the hatred. You're one of the haters." And so anybody who has like any reasonable criticism, and I think there are so many reasonable criticisms of this season, is just lost in the shuffle. And that's how they write you off. And so any kind of like nuanced discussion is just out the window as soon as people start saying, "Oh, this review bombing," and demonizing people who are giving it bad reviews. Because what is the point of that really in the end? Like, oh my, like people online are mad about something. It's really not even newsworthy necessarily. And then on another level, like review bombing is an actual consumer tool. It's one of the few things consumers or fans have at their disposal to like let their voices be heard. And it's unfortunate that oftentimes there are people who are just like, homophobic or whatever involved, or that haven't watched the show. But like if you let's say a game comes out and it's got some terrible loot boxes or something, or overpriced DLC or pay to win shit or whatever, and people are mad and they're not going to buy it, so they review bomb it. And they haven't played it, but they're review bombing it. And they're doing that so that they can let their voices be heard, so that their concerns are known. I think that's a very valid consumer behavior. And I think it's the same thing goes for like, was The Last of Us Part 2 review bombed, or were a lot of people justifiably upset by some of the choices made in that game and now in this season? Like, is it possible that maybe, just maybe, when you kill off the main character and break that, the first game is all based on Joel and Ellie's relationship, and in the second game you kill Joel, is it possible that just a lot of people don't like that? Just don't like that. And they're not interested in it anymore because they don't like that. I think it's fair to say, you killed off Joel and now I'm not that interested anymore. The first 3 Abbott and Costello movies are great. And then you killed off Abbott. Now people are reviewing Abbott and Costello, review bombing Abbott and Costello. Obviously that didn't actually happen, but you take, okay, like let's say in X-Files season 1, you have Scully and Mulder. And then in season 2, you kill off Mulder. And the rest of the X-Files season 2 is like Scully and her new girlfriend investigating aliens, and you don't have Mulder anymore. Eventually, that is kind of what happened in the X-Files, and it went way downhill when one of the main characters was gone. It's pretty valid to me to not like that. I still think it's important to judge what comes next as on its own merits. And I think there was, in the game and in this season so far, there are really good things about it. This show is very well produced. It's well acted, I think, for the most part, especially when the writing's on point. But it is missing something from the first season. And even the first season, something about the show is just a little off. Like sometimes it's great, but it's never like overall great. Like I wouldn't put it on like a best shows list. Like it's not, I watched Severance or Andor or a lot of these really great shows, and it's like, this is great. There's something so unique and compelling about this story, about all, and The Last of Us as a game, I think, had that, but as a show, and maybe it is just because it's an adaptation of a very narratively intense game. So you're not like taking, Street Fighter and making it a movie. You're taking something that had a very distinct story, and you're just telling that story again in a slightly different way. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just not quite as fresh or surprising as a lot of these other shows because it's just missing that originality. Maybe it's something else. It's hard to put my finger on, honestly. But I think there are lots of valid criticisms that get swept under the rug when you just start to say, well, it's being review bombed by the haters and the bigots and, you know. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't hate it. I was accused the other day in one of my videos in the comments of being part of the Neil Druckmann rehabilitation campaign, which is funny to me because I've been pretty critical of this season, and my review of the video game was very critical. I called it a beautiful, terrible sequel. So if I'm part of the Neil Druckmann rehabilitation campaign, I think that the rehabilitation campaign itself needs a rehabilitation campaign because I am not a great spokesman for that. I think that I'm kinder to the show than a lot of people because I'm not just going to get on here and talk about how it's woke garbage, because I find that to be a pretty empty, low-calorie criticism. But is it a show that has made some serious mistakes, that has some pretty wobbly writing at times, and that is fundamentally, just by the nature of its story, going to turn off a lot of people? Yeah, I think so. And I wish that they had done something different with the sequel than they did. But this is the story we have, so I will try to judge it as fairly as possible going forward. Let me know what you thought of this episode. What are your thoughts on review bombing? Is this a valid consumer tool or is it mainly just people crying about Bella Ramsey looking ugly or this being woke, or they just don't like to see lesbians or whatever? I mean, can it be both? Can it be both? Anyways, let me know. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching. Peace.